spent months searching for a Russia scandal, but in an odd twist, the scandal could be one they've had all along, or for a number of years anyway. 2010, the Obama administration approved a deal giving a Russian firm control over 20% of the American uranium reserves. It wasn't very widely noted at the time. It's turned out to be a big deal. President Trump today blasted the press for ignoring what he says is the real scandal. Watch.
If the mainstream media would cover the uranium scandal and that Russia has 20% of our uranium for whatever reason, and a lot of people understand what those reasons may be, I think that's your Russia story. That's your real Russia story, not a story where they talk about collusion and there was none. It was a hoax. The problem is that the mainstream media does not want to cover that story, because that affects people that they protect. And it's a disgrace that the fake news won't cover it.
David Tafuri is a former State Department official. He advises the Obama campaign, advised rather, on foreign policy, and he joins us tonight. David, I'm almost sorry we played that bite, because it might give viewers the impression that this is an inherently political story. There are politics around it, but I'm interested in the policy just as an American, not as someone with political views. Why is it okay that the Obama administration approved the sale of a company that controls 20% of America's uranium reserves to the Russians, now described as our mortal enemy? Why did they do that?
Well, you're right. It's a policy issue and also a legal issue. Now, this happened in 2010. One thing I disagree with you about is it was widely known then. In fact, there were Republican members of Congress who wrote to the administration to argue that they should not approve of this. Now, we have a CFIUS process. That process has to happen anytime a company is going to acquire a company that might impact our national security.
Exactly.
Most countries don't have that process. It's good that we have that process that helps us protect our national security. This deal went through that process. It's a really complex process. 12 agencies of the U.S. government are involved. 9 agency heads make the final decision. Secretary Clinton, Secretary of State at the time, was one of 9 who approved of that decision. I believe that was a bad policy decision back then, but that was 2010. Right now, it's quite different. The situation with Russia is much more extreme, and Russia poses a much more significant threat to our security.
May or may not be true, but for the sake of the debate, I will concede your point and say that Russia is a greater threat than in the past. I don't believe that, but I know that you do. Given that, how horrifying must it be for you to read what's happened to that uranium that the Obama administration allowed the Russians to control? You have in the New York Times a Wyoming landowner on whose land some of these uranium deposits sit, saying, I'm watching trucks come into my property, routinely pack uranium into drums, and truck off to a processing plant abroad. Uranium One, this company has no export license to take that uranium out of this country. It's winding up off this continent. You know exactly where it's going, to places that are dangerous to the United States. And that's all because the Obama administration, with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, allowed this to happen. Why isn't that considered shameful?
Well, you're right. We have to be concerned about the export of uranium, but I think you've overstated.
Concerned? How about terrified?
You've overstated what the New York Times article says.
Well,
it says it states that there was one export of uranium. It went to Canada, and by the way,
I'm reading it right here. I'm sorry. Let me just correct it as a factual matter. I'm quoting now. A uranium spokeswoman, Donna Wickers, said that 25% had gone to Western Europe and Japan. So we know that 25% of this uranium we don't actually have any proof that it went to Western Europe and Japan. We know it left the continent. We don't know if it went to Iran or North Korea or from, where it moved on from there. We've lost control of it. That's the point.
No,
the Russians.
That you're wrong about. So first of all, Western Europe and Japan are our allies. Uranium does not leave the United States without getting a export license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
False. They have no export license. That's the whole point of the story. They don't have an export license.
Okay. We could argue about this story.
But the point of the story,
the more important point of the story is how this deal got approved. Now, with respect to the export of uranium, I haven't heard anyone say that it made it to anywhere improper. In one place,
that's not true.
In one situation, it went to Canada, and it was the trucking company that had the export license.
And
it's important for you to understand.
There is no export license to take this uranium out of this country. But we don't control it. The Russians do, because the Obama people and Hillary Clinton allowed this to happen. And if you think the Russia scandal is indeed a scandal, and you do, and you've argued it here, then how is this not a scandal of a much grander magnitude? This is a huge deal that threatens our national security, but nobody seems to care because it's Obama and Clinton.
But
let's be real.
But then if this is a scandal, it's a scandal for the Trump administration, because that means the Trump administration, during the Trump administration, this uranium is leaving the country without having proper licenses.
They ought to shut this down right now. I couldn't agree with you more.
So that you should be arguing against the Trump administration.
I'm arguing that anybody who's allowing this is in the wrong, and it's a threat to us. But the genesis of this, and it's ongoing to this day, is this deal. Now, the Clintons took, through their foundations, over $100 million from investors in this uranium company. How is that not quid pro quo? I don't understand. It's a deal that you yourself say was a bad deal. They approved it. The Clintons took over $100 million during that period. Why is that not an actual scandal, not a nonsense D.C. scandal?
Let's break that down. The Clintons did not take $100 million. $100 million went in charitable donations to the Clinton Foundation. And the Clinton Foundation used that money for charitable purposes.
We don't know what they used it for. That's not true.
We have their tax returns.
No, actually, we don't.
I've actually reviewed their tax returns.
Okay. I've seen their tax returns too, but to say it went to charitable endeavors, the point is they control it. It went to their foundations. And why do you think by the way, why do you think investors in a uranium company would be giving $145 million to the Clintons? Honestly, no. Let's stop.
These are American, Canadian, and Russians who were involved somehow in the deal. I agree with you.
They care about childhood obesity.
I agree with you. I agree with you that it is dubious. Although I don't agree that just giving money to a charity somehow influenced the Clintons.
Just saying. Let's stop pretending. They're not giving the money because they care about childhood obesity or cholera. They're giving because they want the deal to go through. You know that.
Well, I don't think it's fair for you to say that Bill and Hillary Clinton don't care about some of the charitable purposes that money went to. But the more concerning issue is that Bill Clinton took speaker fees from a Russian investment firm that was also involved in this deal in 2010, near the time that this was
approved.
I agree. And that is more significant. But the question is, did Bill influence Hillary, and did Hillary influence the CFIUS committee, and did she somehow influence the other 8 people? And there's no evidence of that.
Everything about it, from the policy to the payoffs, is sleazy and wrong, and you're basically admitting that, and I appreciate it.
The policy is bad. Right. There's nothing illegal. There's no evidence of illegal activity.
Bring us back. Yes. David Tafuri, thank you for joining us. Well, it looks like it may be the actual Russia scandal, the 2010 Uranium One deal, where the Obama administration approved, for reasons no one will explain at this point, giving a Russian firm control over about 20% of the U.S. uranium reserve. The current president had this to say today about that.
I will say this, the uranium situation with Russia getting uranium, they better look into that. That is looking like a very serious situation.
John Solomon of The Hill has been all over the story since the beginning. Today, he's reporting that Bill Clinton sought permission to meet with a Russian nuclear official while the Obama administration was reaching a final decision on the deal. John Solomon, as we just said, wrote that piece, and he joins us now. So, John, this is actually a remarkable fact, if true, and it looks like you proved it in your piece, that the former president, Bill Clinton, whose wife was then Secretary of State, sought to meet with an official from the very company trying to buy Uranium One.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the timing is really interesting because Hillary had just come back from Moscow, set a lot of business things in motion between the United States and Russia, and Bill Clinton's coming right through her jet stream and trying to figure out going on. He gets a $500,000 check while he's there, and he's at least seeking permission to meet with some people who had a direct interest in what his wife was doing. Now, they say at the end they decided not to do the meetings, but it does raise a new question about who knew what.
But he requested it.
He requested permission from the State Department. Now, who wanted to meet with him? Who knows who requested what? But we do know that he asked for permission to go see these people.
What would be the innocent explanation for why Bill Clinton would want to meet with a nuclear...
With Russia, there's nothing that's innocent, right? Somebody has a motive. And so it could be the Russian officials wanted to follow up on the Hillary Clinton visit and see what the husband knew, right? The former president. Could he carry some water? Or it could be he was looking to do something over in Russia, to do something well for him, for his family. We talked to somebody, someone very close, a close friend of the president, who said he was involved in conversations in 2010 before the president went over to Russia, and that they were talking about doing something, getting some business relationships going that would benefit a family business that they were talking talking about. And I don't know any more than that right now, but that, that may be a possible motive for the trip.
So if the Russians wanted to talk to the husband of the Secretary of State,
Right.
and if business deals were germinating at this time between the U.S. and Russia, it sounds like the Russians really had their eye on Hillary Clinton.
They did. There's not any doubt about that. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to continue to report out some very interesting details about how much the U.S. government knew about Russia's intentions towards the Clintons and what they were trying to do to influence them. A lot more evidence than what's in the public domain right now.
You don't have to believe that there's hidden information, though clearly there is, and you're uncovering it. But even that aside, the fact that the Obama administration gave control over 20% of our uranium to the Russians, was there ever a policy rationale for that?
Well, at the time, they said there was no national security issue, if you remember, in 2015.
Right.
And the argument was, listen, if we don't buy the Russians' uranium, they'll go sell it on the black market, or they'll give it to Iran or North Korea, something we don't want. But we learned this week, that this whole story started on Monday with us, where we reported that the FBI in 2009 proved that Rosatom, its 10X arm here in the United States, was making bribery, kickbacks, extortion, and money laundering right here in the United States while the Clintons were and Obama administration were approving this deal. So there was a good reason not to give Rosatom the uranium. They were engaged in criminal activity.
So you just hinted at something coming up, that you believe the efforts to suborn Hillary, to influence Hillary by the Russians, were broader than we know.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There were multiple efforts to try to win influence, to try to gain access to her. Now, listen, she's a Secretary of State. That's not surprising, but I think we'll get some detail and some specifics about how they tried to do it. Some of the people who made the overtures are going to be pretty famous when you find out who they are. But there was a concerted effort to focus on Hillary Clinton in 09 and 10, and there's a good reason. She was the face of the reboot, the reset with Russia, right? They wanted to know what the heck she was doing, and they put some influence efforts underway.
Considering we've spent the last 11 months hearing from Democrats that there's no greater peril to the United States
Right.
than Russia, it's pretty amazing. John, thank you for all your reporting on this.
Thanks, Tucker. Appreciate it.